Anthony Esselin, I think, wrote a book called 10 Ways to Destroy Your Child's Imagination.
Yes,
I think that's
he
what
did.
it was called. Did you ever see that Fox interview he did?
No.
Did you ever see that, Neil? It's hilarious. So he goes on Fox News and they interview him, and he's just like world-weary Anthony Esselin, sarcastic, like, oh yeah, no, you should totally get your children this, and that'd be great. No, that way, because that way you could destroy their imagination, and then this would happen. They're like, okay. They have no idea how to take him. It was remarkable. I'll have to link to it below. But
I did not. I've never heard of that.
What's a few ways, if we wanted to destroy our children's imagination, what could we do?
If we wanted to destroy their imagination as opposed to build up their imagination? Yeah. You know, it's always a little discouraging to think of it in those terms because we see, like, because we have to look around and see how we're doing it in a way. You know, it's everywhere. Obviously, the screens in our lives are not helping. The constant presence of these things, which you can have the best intentions in the world. I mean, these devices that dictate to you how to look at the world and how to think about things, what's important and what's not. They're everywhere, and they're really hard to keep at bay, because it comes to the point. You know, my wife and I had a conversation the other day about just shutting the internet off in our house, like just getting rid of our Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And just as an experiment, say, what would that do? Like, how would we be? There was a time once when people didn't have that, and it was bothersome and kind of disappointing and maybe even alarming to think, like, man, it would be difficult because this has just been bought into hook, line, and sinker, even by, like, how would we get homework assignments for our kids because that's the way they're coming, or how would we? There were just a handful of ways, and I'm sure we're all there. It's like, I don't know that we can do without this anymore because the world has chosen to do with it, and it creeps into our children's lives, and is showing them the way to look at the world, as opposed to giving them something like Hansel and Gretel, or the robber bridegroom, and saying, "What are you going to do with this?" You know. Now, that's one thing, and that's an obvious thing, like just the infiltration of these media entertainment devices. That's even that makes it difficult even for kids to have their own thoughts,
to lay in bed alone in silence, and
exactly,
to think.
or to be creative, like because that's always going to give you something. Whether it's
there's a
music or a game or
entertainment,
instead of, like, well, if you don't have that, the children will start drawing, and they will start reading and nailing boards onto trees.
The analogy I use is, when I was a kid, I remember my parents would often talk about, why don't you eat apples? We're buying you these fruit, and you're like, are you kidding? We have Cheetos and CC's and Coca-Cola in the fridge. Like, I didn't say that, but it's like, well, obviously, like, why would I? This is so much better than your bruised apples. But you know, I don't know how. I don't mean to congratulate myself, but I mean, my wife is pretty health conscious, and my kids do eat, like, apples and strawberries and bananas, but I never did as a kid because the fast food version of it was always available.
Sure.
And I think likewise, screens provide fast food entertainment, and so why would I read a book? But as you say, if these things aren't there, then and not that children never read, they do, but we have to be selective. Twitter, they read, that's true. Not that they have ceased to read books, but we have to be careful about books that they read, because there really is, just like the horror genre, there's just so much trash or just fluff in the world of children's literature. And you know, like another point that you made about films and sort of how the loss of the art of storytelling, where you just feel kind of preached at. There's always like a message, a political motivation. So many children's books are like that, and children don't like that. I think it was the poet John Keats who said somewhere, we hate
We hate poetry that has a palpable design upon us. And I wonder if that's true for things besides poetry. If we hate stories that have a palpable design upon us, or if we hate systems that have a palpable design upon us.
And what does that mean, palpable design?
I think a plan well, it means a palpable means something that you sense.
Yes, a recognized manipulation.
Yes, yeah. You recognize an agenda, a manipulation. It's like, this is what I want you to take from this, and nothing else.
It's sort of like those stories they used to play for us back in the 90s, and then someone would come on and give you the moral.
Right.
Which is a poor attempt at Aesop's fables.
Oh yeah. And Aesop's fables actually originally the morals at the end of the story are a modern addition. They did not.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, they were put there, I think, as early as the 40s.
Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah, like so slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. If you can find it, because there's just so much.
I didn't realize they predated Socrates.
Oh yeah.
I was reading the Phaedo. Well, I think it was the Phaedo of Meno where Socrates references Aesop's.
I think that there is some tradition that Aesop was a companion of Socrates.
Oh, okay.
But I think those stories existed even before Aesop. He just gave them to us.
Cataloged them.
Yeah, just like Homer has given us the Iliad, but the story of Achilles' wrath, that's not his invention. That's just part of the tradition of that character that he sort of canonized in this way. So yeah, we hate poetry that has a palpable design upon us.
Yeah, it's like a parent who is trying to get you to do something, but in a way that they're pretending that this is your choice. Wouldn't you like to do this? Don't you see this over here? It's like, just no, I don't want to be told what to do.
Right.
It feels like it's interfering in a manipulative sense.
Yeah, and the
tell me to do it or don't tell me to do it, but don't like pretend that you know.
Correct. And the application of this to what we were talking about is that so many books have that palpable design, whether it's a woke agenda or whatever you want to say.
Any child's book about Kamala Harris.
Right. That children will reject that. And you have to give them stories that respect them more and are presenting the world to them. Chesterton said somewhere that I feel like any quotation that I give from Chesterton is like that. He said somewhere in that mountain of work that he did, that mountain of a man, that, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure, that the whole point of education, which, you know, this is me jumping in, is the whole point of parenting or reading. I mean, insofar as education is for children, it's everything that they do. Education should be a way of life. So the whole point of education is to give children, I think he said, abstract and eternal standards to judge material and fugitive conditions. Now, that's kind of a mouthful. I'll just say it again because I think I like that idea of education, that it's the whole point of education is to give children eternal and abstract standards or principles to judge material and fugitive conditions. I think that's really true. To give them the foundation,
universal,
to give them the good, the true, and the beautiful. Like, you know what is good, you know what is beautiful, and you can identify it as such. You can judge things as such. And that should be the work of education, and that's a large part through the cultivation of imagination. Though it's an act of the imagination to enter into the eternal, or the abstract, obviously, and that's go ahead.
I think it was maybe in the Republic where Socrates said, "Let educate children, like their education should be like play," and he said, whereas a child, you might impose upon him a physical exercise for him to grow in that physical ability. You put strain on the body, and this benefits the body. And he says something like it's not good for the mind. But what do you think about that idea about let their education be like play? I mean, there's a way, and that sounds fluffy.
Well, certainly. I mean, it's ironic. I think the Latin word for school is ludus, which is also the word for play. That there's an etymological connection between school and play. Or in Greek, the word for school is rooted to the word leisure.
That's right, yeah.
So, yeah, is there something about play that should educate? I mean, I think yes, but again, with play, children hate the palpable design. I'm not going to, if you give a child a toy that's just designed to teach you your alphabet or your colors or your geography, no. But if you give a child a shovel and a dirty place, there's no palpable, there's some ends involved. It depends on the kid we're talking about. I had this experience. I visited. This is the first year that my son, Luke, is attending a Montessori school where we live. And there was this event where you come and you visit the school, and your child sort of shows you the things that he enjoys doing there. And he brought us out to their property. This is a wonderful school. It was a good sign. Like when we signed him up, we had to sign this waiver. It's like, it's okay if he climbs trees. It's okay if he digs holes. Like, I won't hold you responsible.
Occasionally, dirt.
So he took us out to the woods on the property of this school, and it was incredible to see the excavations that these children are working on. I mean, they're just digging huge holes.
That's wonderful.
But it is wonderful. And building kind of forts, putting sticks over the top. Like, we're talking holes that are as large around as this table and as deep.
Wow.
It was wild and so good to see. And he was showing us these holes. That was his thing. He was like, I want to show you the holes that we're digging in the back. And I was not expecting this.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, these are serious. Like,
you can kill a man.
and they have this whole system where they're digging in this dirt and finding little bits of coal. We live in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And the children have identified this as their currency. And there's a system that if you get so many things, then you can buy this and that. They're building things. And I mean, this is the imagination at work. This is not how you destroy their imagination. Mm-hmm. They just need a dirty place with some trees, other children, or you know what I'm saying,
and the possibility of danger.
Yep, some shovels, some
Peril.
sticks, and there are ends that are being achieved there. They're having a good time, and maybe they're learning something. They certainly are learning something about work. But nobody came and said, "Oh, you could use these bits of coal as currency." This is an exercise in economics now.
Or the reason it's good to cooperate with your partner here is because in the world you need to learn to give and take, or something like
There's
that.
none of that, but they enter into those situations if left to themselves and are learning something about work through their play. I mean, it's funny how there's something about play in children that seems to mimic work. Boys playing with construction trucks or weapons. Mm-hmm. Like, these are sort of imitations of higher callings that are serious.
And as who wrote Wild at Heart, John Eldridge, as John Eldridge says, if you take their weapons away from them, they'll bite their crackers into guns and shoot each other with them.
That's right. Yes, it's very mysterious. So that's we're thinking about ways that the imagination is hindered, but I was talking about giving them books that allow the imagination to exercise itself rather than an invitation by a book or a game or a toy to say, well, put your imagination in this box. Like, this is the way this is, and now we put it on the shelf and it's over. Like, just to give them something, whether in a toy, in their outdoor experience, or in their books, that allows them to receive some, hopefully, eternal and abstract principles. I mean, this is talking about it even now with Chesterton's quote. It's a little too mechanical. It should be a little bit more virtuosic than this. But certainly the pitfalls are out there that are getting in the way of a healthy, imaginative development.
Well, tell us about Greg's, the school you teach at.
Sure. Yes.
I want people to know about it, why you think it's a great school, what it is you do differently.
Yeah, well, we are a school that puts a great emphasis on the imagination. A school that wants to teach through all of the stories that are out there, whether it's the story of Robin Hood or the story of a geometry prop or the story of science, the story of trees, to tell things, to tell the story of the world through these adventures, these experiences, these works that we engage.
Just to back up real quickly, though, for those who have no idea, what is St. Greg's?
Okay, right.
Yeah, just real briefly, but then we can move on.
Yeah, sure. Gregory the Great Academy is a very small, just 60 boys. It's a boarding school for boys in the Pocono Mountains in Elmhurst, Pennsylvania. And it's a classical school, but not necessarily in the way that you maybe automatically think about a classical school. Yes, we read certain works that are classical because they've passed the test of time, but like many schools that call themselves classical or that are identified as such, it's not so much what you do, but we at Gregory the Great, it's more about how you do it. We think that there's a kind of there's a way that is appropriate to learn, to engage the mind and the heart with these works that have passed the test of time. That a lot of emphasis is put on music, on poetry, experience, hands-on, conversation. We don't really teach to the test, so to speak. For instance, I teach literature. I don't go into a class with a plan. I read the chapter of Treasure Island that the boys have read, and we talk about it, and whatever comes up, comes up. And I've read the book 1,000 times, and I know my way through
the first time. I'm like 5 chapters in. That's it.
My!
I'm actually really enjoying it.
It is. It's. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. I hope you love it. You will love it. And maybe I'll do this book for a month. Maybe I'll do it for 3 months. I mean, I let the conversation happen.
If you like that clip, be sure to like and subscribe. Cheers.